Hey everybody, and welcome to week 12 of this course. Gosh, I can't believe it's gone by so quickly. I don't know if it's going by quickly for you or not, but I wanted to just send you this short little message because I know you have a fair bit to read this week, and also you'll be watching the video by Dr. Stephen Quaddick on the predictors, but I kind of wanted to just give you some resources that we have at the State Board of Education around the predictors and kind of explain some of this in maybe more common language, I guess. So when we talk about predictors, I just want to be really clear that we're really just simply talking about what are those in-school experiences, such as programs, skill development, and activities that help prepare our students for a better future and better outcomes in both their further education and training and employment and also independent living after high school. So essentially the predictors are, what are those things that have been shown by research to show evidence that they are really making a difference in a student's outcomes, right? So there are 23 of them, and Dr. Quaddick really goes through those in depth and how they were researched and how they were found to really have an impact on outcomes. But I wanted to just point out a few of those today, and the ones that I like to say kind of the most bang for your buck in a lot of ways. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about inclusion in general education. So, what we know is that even with students with complex needs, when they are included in general education curriculum and courses, that they have higher expectations and rise to those expectations, and they also have better access to the core content. So sometimes I think when we pull students out into separate classrooms, we're not always paying attention to the core and exposing the students to the core. So really making sure, I think, that you advocate that students with complex needs have access to general education, not only core standards, but also the actual courses and those classes so that they're with their peers. And then, of course, recognizing that they're going to have some modifications and accommodations in the general education setting. So just quickly, also, I wanted to point out how important the predictor of work experiences and specifically paid employment. So we want to always, I think, when we're developing a student's transition plan, is to really, ask ourselves, have they been able to explore work? Have they had opportunities for job shadowing? Internships, whether those paid or unpaid, but really starting early, I think, around that idea of career development and exposure to work and actually being in those work settings out of the school building in the community. So keeping that in mind. And then last but definitely not least, again, I know we've hit on this so much, but the importance of self-advocacy and self-determination, no matter how significant the student's disabilities might be or how extensive their support needs are, whether they use verbal language or not, a student can still be very self-determined and advocate for themselves and ask for their, things that they need. And that might look like making choices. A lot of times our students with extensive support needs that maybe don't use verbal language aren't given the opportunity to make choices. And so really thinking about that early on, even in the pre-K and elementary years, how can we teach students and provide lots of opportunities for them to make choices and kind of have more control over their environment. So those are just a few that I highlighted, but obviously there's 23 predictors here. And I wanted to also point out that we've put together a Padlet, and I put the link for this Padlet in the Canvas course. And we have just actually put this Padlet together, and it really dives into the predictors specifically, and we're going to continue to build this out, but this might be more of a useful Padlet as opposed to, just kind of using the articles around the predictors. So this might be a resource that down the road, if you want to kind of learn more about each predictor and how to make sure that you are accessing those and implementing those in your setting, and specifically for students, then check out this Padlet. Hopefully by now you have a place where you can bookmark all of these Padlets. And then another thing I wanted to share with you was we this last year put together a Padlet specifically for preparing students for college programs. And this one it's pretty broad. So we think that all of the things that are in this Padlet really do apply to all students with disabilities, but it was really meant for the population of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities to really help prepare them for those college programs like Aggie's Elevated, Wolverine's Elevated. And so what we did last year is we reached out to our partners at Aggie's Elevated, Wolverine's Elevated, for example, and other college programs and said, what are the skills you expect students to have when they get there? And where are you seeing more gaps and needs where they don't have those skills? And how can we, as K-12 educators, help prepare those students better so that when they arrive on those college campuses, they have some of these skills and you're not having to sort of play catch up and make sure that they have these skills. So we met with them a bunch of times and said, kind of what are those, we called them big rocks, like what are those big domain areas, those areas where you really see that students need to have these skills before they reach you. And what we came up with is 10 areas. So I just want to quickly go over those. And obviously you'll see some overlap here between the predictors and what we found out through partnering with our higher ed partners. So self-advocacy being one of them, right? That's a huge one. And I hear that so often from folks at colleges saying, our students with disabilities are coming to us and they still can't really advocate for their needs. They don't really understand their disabilities. So this is something we're constantly working with. But also areas like the next one, social interactions, right? Like knowing how to appropriately communicate with adults versus friends, navigating social media, knowing when to, text messages appropriately. So kind of all of those nuances around social interactions as they are now in adult settings. And then two other areas were management and organization. So that also sometimes is called executive functioning. So being able to prioritize, using task lists, using calendars, all of those kinds of things, really important adult skills. And then problem solving. Can they, manage their mistakes? Can they learn from their mistakes? Can they understand consequences? So just some quick examples of problem solving. Emotional regulation, kind of do students have coping strategies when they're stressed? Do they understand their consequences of their behaviors and their choices? And then, of course, this list can be really long, but adult living skills. So things like, packing their own lunch, being able to order food independently at a food court, for example, or a restaurant, managing a weekly budget, keeping appointments, making appointments, making shopping lists, kind of all of those adult skills. So that's an important area. Our higher ed partners also said, we're finding that students don't really understand like safety and wellness around healthy relationships, how to manage their medication, for example, just generally how to stay healthy and well. And then community navigation being really important, right? When students leave the four walls of their school buildings, they should have some skills around public transportation, navigating a college campus, knowing who a safe person is to, ask for help. So that was a big area. And then the last two, career development and technology skills. So career development, can be anything around participating in an internship. Ideally, we want students to have that experience before they get to college campuses and, before they leave high school, but also things like, do they understand the concept of a time card or creating a resume or, sending an email to your supervisor or boss that you're going to be out sick or a text message. So all those things that kind of are around, what's appropriate in the work world and that development of a career. And then technology skills, are students able to use a learning management system like Canvas? A lot of times our students with complex needs are not expected to navigate Canvas in their high schools, but when we get to colleges, they are. So making sure that we are, teaching and navigating websites, how to use different applications like Word and PowerPoint and all those kinds of things. So those were the big areas. But what we also recognize is we can't cram all of these skills and instruction in the last year of a student's high school career. So we have to kind of map these out and slowly start, building upon these skills. So we created this tool as early as pre-K and kindergarten, right? We always say in transition, you can't start early enough. So those of you that think that maybe you only want to work with younger students, you're still teaching transition skills. And I think hopefully this tool will really help break some of those down. So let's say you're teaching fifth grade, for example, you could use this tool and kind of look at all these domain areas and then, consider when you're developing the student's IEP and instructional programs that you are incorporating a lot of these skills and areas where you can support the practice of these skills. And I would also encourage that you really share this with parents to make sure parents understand kind of developmentally where they can really encourage and work on these skills at home with their students so that it's not so overwhelming when they get to high school and we realize we haven't really addressed a lot of these skill areas. So that is the post-secondary transition skills mapping tool for you. I hope you find that helpful, and I just wanted to point that out as a resource. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week. Thanks.